Hi, my name is Laura Avar, and I'm going to be doing the current rebuttal speech for this round. So first, I'm going to acknowledge something that the opposition said. They said that I went 38 seconds over time, but 25 seconds were spent on an off-time disclaimer for the topics discussed in my speech, which doesn't count as on time. With that said, I'm going to present an off-time roadmap. First, I'm going to go into framework, then refutation, and lastly, impact. With that said, my time shall begin now. Framework is a basic structure underlying a system or a concept. The proposition challenged the framework, which states that the team that supports the integrity of legal refugees should win this round. The framework is in fact on topic because it correlates with the system of ideals and arguments being presented in this debate. However, if one team cannot defend the integrity of refugees, that's a major reason not to win the ballot. Now, Judge, into the arguments about saving lives. Judge, the opposition questioned topicality instead of refuting arguments with warranted and impactful evidence, thus losing on framework. However, the opposition speech is a proposed counterplan which states that the real obligation of governments is not whether to apply conditions or not, is that in both worlds, refugees are still gonna come into these countries, and the real moral obligation for governments is fixing the current broken system instead of keeping the unorganized amount of refugees in critical conditions from coming in. Now into deaths at sea crossings. At least 18,000 people have lost their lives in Mediterranean crossings since 2014. And now into refugee camps. They're supposed to be a safe environment for refugees. They are not. Our main concerns are for our children and their needs, nutrition, health, hygiene. Here they can no go to school, and the walls are damp and covered with mold. The only furniture is a piled mattresses in the corner that are laid out on the floor at night. They are all traumatized. This was said by a mother that was in a refugee camp with their child. Death rates are at alarming levels at a refugee camp in Ethiopia, where on average 10 children aged under 5 die each day, Judge. Most of the refugees have flood conditions and famine in rural areas. But Adrian Edwards, spokesman of the UN High Commissioner for Refugees, said death rates have reached alarming levels among new arrivals. This has been caused because of diseases and malnutrition. Judge, refugees are fleeing their country because they cannot eat, because they're in an intense famine. And when they come to the refugee camps that are supposed to be a safe environment, they don't have where to sleep. They don't have nothing to eat. They don't have medicines. And this is still as bad as the situation in their own country. What needs to be done is a maximum amount of refugees for countries to truly settle accepted refugees. Now into the arguments on taxes. On a yearly average, it is $1.8 billion per refugee that is spent by the government, including in that are enormous refugee settlements in welfare, housing assistance, and education. What's more, said that the FAIR study provided to Secrets, 50% of refugees remain on Medicaid after 5 years, and 70% remain on SNAP after 5 years too. This may be a result of the fact that refugees are slow to assimilate into the US and that their wages remain nearly stagnant. Assisting refugees is a noble cause that most Americans support. However, the system in which we provide that support fails to help the greatest number of people. It's highly expensive and presents considerable risk from a national security standpoint. It is time for the United States to re-examine our policies and priorities regarding refugees and consider alternative measures that would help a greater number of refugees in a more cost-effective way. Now into the argument on unemployment. The opponent said how the rate of unemployment for refugees was 3.1 and of native borns was 3.9. However, Judge, don't let the opposing team fool you. 3.1% is a high number when we talk about 18,000 refugees, and compare with 328 million native borns in 2019 as well. Also, with 3.7% of unemployment rate in the US in 2019, numbers simply don't add up. And as I mentioned, more than half, 51%, refugees surveyed also blame discrimination for them being jobless, meaning that the xenophobia, homophobia, and biased religious system is still present in the countries, mostly in the United States, as I have presented evidence, where they are anti-Muslim, when they don't help the people that they need to be helping, that are the refugees. Now into impact calculus. Speaking at the launch, Filippo Grandi, UN High Commissioner for Refugees, so reported that 6 lives were lost on average every day last year because of crossings. This is extremely important, Judge, because the opposition is the only team presenting real quantification, while the proposition talks about saving millions of lives in an unrealistic perspective, merged with the unsettling truth that is, countries are not ready and they're not preparing, Judge. If you, Judge, want to save people from sex trafficking, xenophobia, homophobia, and the risk of losing their lives, I urge you for a strong con ballot. Thank you very much.